So, what if the financial freedom that you've been told is the one thing that you should be focusing on around money? The independent, the self sufficient, the doing it all for yourself is actually the very thing that's been keeping you from the enriched, abundant life that you are perhaps seeking. I'm Catherine Morgan. I'm a qualified financial advisor turned somatic financial coach. And on today's show, I want to talk about the topic of financial freedom. And it's so interesting that every single book in the personal finance space, including my own book, It's Not About the Money, refers to this topic of financial freedom being a very individual pursuit. And in last week's show, we talked about stepping into the money visionary as an alternative way to goal setting around money. And so many of you have messaged me to tell me that many of your personal visions that you hold for yourself are actually changing and shifting now that you have been utilizing that ritual and can actually really contemplating this from a place of not just individualism, but also for the power of the collective and the impact that that personal vision can have on the rest of your local family, your communities, and the world. And so today, I wanted to explore a conversation that I don't actually think anyone has ever had about why everything that we've been taught about financial independence might actually just be the very thing that is stopping us from creating a better life for ourselves and for others around us. And this isn't about shifting from completely away from individual financial success, but I'm definitely feeling, certainly this year, that I wonder what would be possible if it wasn't about individual financial freedom, and what would be possible if we contemplated this from a different perspective, and what this might mean for you, for your life, for your business. And so that's what we're going to be diving into today, and really understanding how this old way, this old paradigm of independence around money is maybe not the way that's going to support us going forward. It's definitely a question I've been considering in the way that I teach around money. And when I think about the word freedom, what comes up for you when you think about that word? When I think about the word freedom, right? It's like there's a practical element to this, and then there's an emotional sense, this kind of releasing of aspects, beliefs, systems, structures, relationships that don't allow us to feel free, that make us feel trapped or contained in some way, where we're not maybe living the life that we want to live. And then there's a very practical element of freedom that comes with questions such as when can I retire and when can I leave my job, and some of those pieces. And it reminds me of the conversation around the kind of masculine and feminine way of living and using that in connection to money. So many of you may have heard of masculine and feminine ways of living and masculine and feminine ways of approaching money, or the yin and the yang, I guess. And the way I like to summarize that is the sort of the being and the doing, the strategic and the emotional, the balance between doing things in life and the being a version of ourselves that is trusting of the decisions that we make around money, that is trusting of what is happening around us, even when there are things that are going on that we can't control. And this balance between doing and sitting in contemplation with money. When making decisions around money in particular, I think it's really important to be able to understand both and be able to practice from both of those perspectives. Because when we're in too much in the doing, we get overwhelmed, we get depleted. And if we're too much in the feminine, then nothing actually gets done. If we're sat in contemplation all day long, then there's no aligned action that happens off the back of it. And I think that is exactly what is happening with money right now when I talk about this concept of financial freedom. And are we asking the wrong questions by asking what is financial freedom for me? What is the number, the amount of money that I need to have to be able to retire and be financially free? There's lots of descriptions or ways to actually determine what financial freedom is. If you listen to the FIRE, like the movement around the FIRE movement is very much about retiring as early as possible and saving as much money as possible. And their description of financial freedom is about exactly that. It's about being able to maybe leave work early, or to be able to do things that you're not able to do right now, and pay off your mortgage and have your savings balances full and an investment account. And this is how I learned about money too, being a financial advisor for many, many years. This is what we would teach around money. And I think that it's just a question I've been sitting with. We've become so accustomed to this one magical goal of hitting this milestone where financial freedom means that then we'll be complete. And I'm just not sure that is the way that money is going to move as we evolve into this new paradigm around money. And even the way that we are seeing retirement, the way that we are living our lives is changing so much. Certainly when I think about my children growing up, I'm asking myself questions around what kind of careers they might have, what kind of jobs they might be in, given the fast evolution of AI and technology. The likelihood is that the jobs that we were taught that were good professions to get into in school are not the same as they will be moving forward. And it just gets you thinking about, if those kind of things are changing in life, how does this impact our relationship with financial freedom, where we may be not having to work as many long hours, maybe going down to a 4-day work week, perhaps investing in decentralized finances like crypto or Bitcoin, where the money's not actually held by banks, it is decentralized. And that brings up a whole load of questions and fears and unknown around money. And so I want to just first of all, honor the fact that we've learned so much about how money is distributed in the world and how money is circulated. And certainly around the topic of traditional personal finance, most money personal finance frameworks are built on the basis that you budget and you goal set your way to personal success, that you eliminate debt through discipline, and you save and you invest, you build your emergency funds, you fill your retirement pot, you maximize your earnings potential, you live below your means, all of those things. And they're not wrong in their frameworks or their principles. But I think it's interesting to get curious to what's underneath them. What is underneath these systems that we have been teaching and learning over these last X number of centuries? And how might that look different as we navigate this future ahead of us around money? I think a lot of the practices, a lot of the systems have been built on a poverty consciousness paradigm, this old economy that has been in a place of scarcity, because for many of us, our relationship with money has been formed based on those systems that were governed through our parents' generation and our grandparents' generation. Everything was about control and survival and safety. And so the belief that there's not enough means automatically you're going to start thinking about yourself, or how do I look after myself? put myself first? How do I look after my financial needs? How do I secure my financial future? And that's what we have learned. Independence equals safety. Needing other people's help with money is not safe. It's vulnerable. We don't want to be reliant on other people. And so somewhere along this journey, we've learned that needing other people means that we're weak, that true success, true financial success is when you've made it by yourself. You've made the money, you've saved it, you've invested it, and you've done it by yourself. And I think it's a really interesting piece to consider here as we move forward with money is, well, what happens if this isn't about individual pursuit? Because there are so many things around money that are outside of our control, and we can't control everything. And I think there's definitely a piece around this to contemplate as we move forwards. And I hear this when I listen to people's relationship with money, and they'll say things like, I can't stop overspending, or they feel paralyzed around making financial decisions. Maybe you yourself have been through periods like this around money, or you've just been, quite frankly, exhausted from building your business. And it almost certainly always comes down to the belief that I need to know more. I need to know more about how to make wealth and build more financial independence and make more profit in the business and all of those things. And it becomes less about actually asking, well, who has got this knowledge? Who can support me in learning about the strategies or the steps or the things that I'm maybe not seeing as opportunities? And it's the sharing of those resources that is exactly the thing that is the solution to many of those questions. And that kind of financial freedom requires a different way of thinking. And as we move into 2026, I'm really sensing this shift from this sort of poverty consciousness to recognizing that, when we are in a world of unlimited resources, then all of a sudden, if we really were to embody that belief that everything is unlimited and that there is always resources available to me, then we start to let go of some of those old systems that have taught us that it's all about hoarding for ourselves and actually turning our help to each other and dissolving some of those old paradigms. And we're seeing this a lot in every aspect of our life. I'm certainly seeing this in the educational space. So many parents are taking their children out of schooling systems because schools are not fit for purpose. I really believe that. I feel like this year I want to be voicing this more and more on my platforms, is that the school systems are not set up to support our children anymore. They're based on these old systems, the pre-industrial revolution age. They're setting our children up for failure because they're setting them up to learn about jobs that actually won't even exist anymore. And more parents are experiencing this. They're seeing this. They're trying to communicate it and not being heard. They are also trying to navigate a schooling system that is not supporting children who are neurodivergent. And we're starting to see new systems, new ways of living being created, not actually trying to change the old systems, the existing systems, but just creating new ones. And over time, the belief is that these new systems will override the old systems. And so I want you just to sit with something just for a moment. I want you to sit with this question of, what if financial independence is actually interdependence, like in disguise? 2026 this year is not about moving from yang to yin or masculine into feminine. It's about not, it's not about needing to destroy or abandon those old structures and traditional ways of finance and things that we've been taught, and replacing it with collective circulatory systems or flow-based models. It's not always about that. It's about remembering that there is a wholeness when we actually take into account both of these structures. And I know this sounds a little bit deep and a little bit woo, and you might be thinking, what the hell are you talking about, Catherine? And I'm just feeling this real call to these two pieces working together. It's not about the masculine versus the feminine. It's not about the doing versus the being. It's not about being in spirituality and consciousness versus being in another form. It's actually just remembering that when everything comes together, when we hold space to hear all of these parts, and remembering that wholeness is really about where things come together. It's that circulatory system. And I think this is at the heart of everything that we're exploring with money right now, is that we don't need to replace these old systems. We need to go from independence to dependence, but in a collective. I have no idea if this is even making sense. But it's like, we don't need to go completely from one to the other. We just need to remember that there is space for things to come together. And think about this in the context of money. When the wealthiest people you can imagine on this world, they're not actually independent at all. They've got counsel, they have financial advisors, they might have accountants, they might have investment managers, they're investing in companies, other companies, not just their own companies. They've got teams supporting them, whether it's home teams or office teams. They've got community supporting them. They have a network of supports. So money doesn't just flow in isolation. It flows through that connection, through having support, through relationship. I guess that's what I'm really getting to here, is that money flows through relationship. And I think we've kind of confused this independence over the years. We've confused financial freedom with having to do it by ourselves. But true freedom comes from emotional capacity, from clarity, from trust, the clarity to realize that I don't have to do this by myself. I never have had to do this by myself. We've always been connected. I just don't think we've really remembered that. And I remember when this feeling of being alone really landed for me. And it was a couple of years ago. I was in a season in my business. I was struggling. I was trying to make sense of what I was doing. And I wasn't failing, but it just wasn't flowing. And I was doing everything that I was always doing, trying to figure it out by myself, reading every book, taking every course, trying all the different strategies. And then somebody in my community gave me some advice. And before they gave the advice, they just said, would it be okay if I just share something with you? And I was like, sure, I've probably heard it before. Like, this is a little voice in my head going, I've probably heard it before, but sure. And I didn't even feel open to receive the advice. And they shared this advice, and it shifted so much, because it wasn't the actual advice in itself that was useful. It was just that my body was like, okay, so it is okay for me to receive help and guidance from other people. This sense of interdependence is safe. It's okay to receive help, receive support, and things can be okay. I don't have to do it all by myself. And being held in that space was safe. And that's exactly how abundance works. Everything is about flowing. It's about being aligned. And when we stop operating from a place of doing things for ourselves in the pursuit of independent financial freedom, and we start operating from being open and being connected to other people, to asking for help, asking for some support, then everything just moves very differently. It actually moves, it doesn't just stay static. So I guess what I'm trying to articulate here in this episode is I really want you to feel into, what if the most sacred thing that you could do with money this year isn't about individual achievement, isn't about setting individual goals? What if it is just about recognizing this dance between individual sovereignty and collective sovereignty, where we get to experience both, receiving and giving, structure and flow, holding your own vision and being held by others. And I think that this year as well, particularly, we are in a really significant period of time in astrology where we are seeing the collapse of these old paradigms based on control and scarcity being replaced by paradigms that are centered on love and unity. And even just in my content, you can probably hear a shift in the way that I'm communicating to you around the conversation of money. It's no longer about individual goals and pursuit, but more about collective unity, collective financial well-being, collective financial independence. It's not independence, it's collectively coming together. Now, what does that mean if you think about this in the context of money? Well, it looks like collective savings, collective sharing of resources. And when I think about some of the business models that exist around that, you can already start to see business models that are built on this approach of collectiveness. So, for example, platforms such as, and the name has completely gone out of my head, it's a platform where people can subscribe to a newsletter. What is it called? What is it called, people? It'll come to me in a second. But it's a platform where the way that content is shared and distributed is actually more control is given to the creator. Substack is the name. Thank you, Brain, for reminding me of that. And there are communities being built like Substack where there is more control by the creator, and it is being shared for the good of the collective. Rather than building like an individual email list, you're sharing your knowledge, your expertise, your skills on a shared platform. Reddit is a very similar one as well, where people are creating collective community groups and sharing on topics and asking questions around certain topic areas. And those are great examples of how business models are shifting towards more of this collectiveness. And I think that a lot of the ways in which we build wealth collectively are not even something that we know yet. So we don't even know what that's going to look like in the future. And certainly, it just even in my articulation of how I'm trying to share this with you today, I'm still grappling with, well, what does this actually look like in the future? Where we recognize that your flourishing is also about the community's flourishing, and where these are woven together, your prosperity is the community prosperity. And this is going to require a whole bunch of trust because interdependence, where things are all connected and woven together, can make some of us feel quite vulnerable. I don't want to be dependent on other people because it's easier just to rely on myself. And we've spent years building these emotional walls for safety. But I just think that we are going to move forward into a world where those walls are going to limit you. They're going to cut you off from the thing that actually your soul is seeking the most. And I am totally here for all of whatever is coming up, letting the old systems go, turning within and finding and helping each other. And I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are on this. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this. Are you feeling this shift? How does it feel for you to consider building wealth for the collective, for your communities, your neighborhoods, rather than learning all these different strategies about it being about you and yourself? And there's almost a sense of relief, I think, to contemplate that. The relief of, can you imagine if all of the billionaires on the planet were to share their wealth because resources are unlimited? The way that money is going to be valued is going to be changing because the jobs are changing, the whole economy is shifting. And it is worrying, but also exciting at the same time. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Let me know if you're listening to this on YouTube. Let me know in the comments below. Let me know if you're listening to this on the podcast. Drop me an email or connect with me on one of my social accounts. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And one simple little practice to share to kind of move this into more of a practical sense is I want you to just think about one gentle practice that you can bring in this week and notice where you're trying to do it alone with money. Just notice. Where are you operating from a belief that asking for help means that you're a failure? Or what financial decisions are you struggling with that you could actually invite some help in from other people? And where is community already holding you that you haven't acknowledged? What would it feel like, literally feel like in your body to ask for support with money? And then if you are ready, I would love for you to go and ask for one piece of financial help this week. Real support. Asking a friend how they can handle a money challenge that you're facing. Joining a business community instead of having to do it alone this year. Sharing your financial vision or your goals with somebody and asking them to check in with you against those. Letting somebody mentor you. Allowing support. Feeling deserving to go and invest in that for your own personal growth, contributing to collective resources in your community. This is definitely something I'm going to be thinking about this year in our programs, is allowing the people in the community to contribute resources to the community, because I don't know everything. There will be many suggestions, ways of working with money, rituals, anchors, somatic exercises, practical things that people have done in the community which have really helped them, and allowing people to contribute to building collective resources is something I'm contemplating in my business for the future. So just notice what comes up when you consider this. And if you do notice that your body goes into this, oh, I can't ask for help, what will people think? I should be doing everything by myself. Then just take a breath. Remind yourself that's the old pattern that has been. And it's done a great job so far. But I wonder if there's something new on the horizon. What if interdependence is actually what we have been seeking all along? Not getting into this exhausting hustle of proving that you can do it all by yourself. Not the isolation of individual success or individual financial freedom, the self-sufficiency, but the ease of being interconnected. Being interconnected. It's interesting. I'm definitely going to be pondering more upon this as we go through the rest of 2026. And so much of your money stories alone, they don't come from you alone. They come from this interconnection of family beliefs that you've learned, generations of beliefs, societal beliefs, beliefs from your friends, beliefs from social media, beliefs from religion. All of these influences, they're all interconnected. But when we sit there and think about, there's a problem with me, I'm not good with money, there's something about my money story, I need to go and heal myself, I need to fix myself, we just isolate ourselves. And so that's what I want you to invite in from listening to this today. Collectiveness. What would be possible? I think there's space for it all. 2026 is going to be a really foundational year. And I think there is space for this new infrastructure. We're already seeing it with decentralized platforms. So what if this year, instead of trying to make it alone, you let yourself be held in community, being supported? What if interdependence isn't a sign of weakness? And so that's my invitation. And if you want to explore your relationship with money and this concept of freedom, then come and join us in the Body of Wealth. This is a $37 experience, 4 modules that are going to support you to actually be in that vision of collectiveness as well as being in that vision of independence. And how do you navigate money around both of those sides? You can join us over at themoneypanel.co.uk/body of wealth. And I would really, really love to hear your thoughts on this episode. You might have been like, oh my God, what on earth are you talking about, Catherine? But if you are sensing any of this for yourself, if you found this valuable, give me a little thumbs up on YouTube or send me an email if you're listening elsewhere. And until next time, I will see you on the podcast or on this show next Monday. Take care, guys.